Are kids supposed to cry at school? No, but do we let them? No, yeah, no. Creative outlets, yeah. Like drawing, right? Painting, writing, you know, being able to write stories. When kids are writing and they're drawing things about people dying and things like that, then I'm like, ooh, this kiddo's not in a good place. We need to help support this kid instead of penalizing them necessarily for you shouldn't have drawn that, that's not okay. They shouldn't have drawn that, that's not okay. But what's going on within them that they're representing their pain in that way? And how can we help them? What are some techniques you use with students to help regulate them? Puzzles, Wordle, yeah, that's a great one too. The puzzles are awesome. They work really, really well. Talking about a preferred topic. If they know that math is coming up and they don't want to go to math, talking about, oh, well, aren't you going to the trampoline park this weekend? And that's going to be so fun. And what are you going to do first? And all that. Absolutely, that can help. Having a robot suit is a safe space. And it also is, I don't have to be my person right now. I can be this other person. It's an escapism. I had a foster child who lived with me for a period of time. Very, very physically aggressive. But when he put on this certain shark costume, he was so good when he had it on. He'd walk around in the shark costume like this, and I'd be like, Kenny the shark makes good choices. Kenny the shark eats his breakfast. Kenny the shark puts his dishes in the dishwasher. Kenny the shark, his name wasn't even Kenny, but there was this old TV show called Kenny the Shark, where the shark used to like eat furniture and stuff all the time and then throw it up. It was really funny. And he'd be like, sorry. But we called him Kenny the Shark, and when he had Kenny the Shark costume on, he was like a different kid. He morphed into this other personality that he could be. Think about that when you have students that are going from elementary to middle to high. It's an opportunity for them to be a different person. It's an opportunity for them to recreate themselves and to be a different person. So it may go from the fact that instead of calling him Kenny, you're gonna call him Ken or something. Change their personality for them. That might work with some of the kiddos that you're working with. Help them change their identity by changing the time period and the people that they're with and all that. We're all at a transition point right now. Some of us bigger than others, but we're all at a transition point where kiddos are moving to a different grade, or kiddos are getting different groups of people with them and all of that. So let's help them get to that point. What else works to help regulate them?
My afternoon kiddo likes to play Uno, which can go either way.
It can go either way because it's somewhat competitive.
Is she good at cheating or is she
bad at cheating? I was taking a fitness class at one point and I was cheating, doing tricep dips because I was tired. And the instructor came over and she said, you're only cheating yourself by doing it that way. And I said, but if I'm cheating myself, am I really cheating? Because I know about it. She didn't like that response. But we want to think about like what else can regulate them. What are the basic regulators that work for most people?
Deep breaths.
Yep. Those of you who've been with me at trainings before, what regulators work for most everybody?
Activating the vagus nerve.
Activating the vagus nerve. Yep. How can we do that? Pressure on the forehead. Yep. All of those sorts of things will work. Pressure on the stomach, humming, buzzing, all of those activate the vagus nerve. Singing, wind instruments, that activates the deep breath. Absolutely. So it runs from the brain stem down to your pubic bone. It's one of the longest nerves in the body, and what ends up happening is that nerve actually takes all of its information from the body and then sends that information to the brain. 80% of that information, the rest of it, 20% goes back down. But that is why it's different, because it takes information from your body and sends it to the brain versus most of the other nerves, giant nerves in your body, actually send information out to the rest of your body from the brain. This one takes information from up to the brain. So it's very different because of that. It is also responsible for triggering the amygdala. What does that trigger? What does the amygdala do? It triggers your fight, flight response. Okay, so if you work with kids who have issues with aggression, things like that, their fight or flight is probably hypersensitive. Right? If you work with kids who elope, the classroom, the building, are not in the designated area they need to, their fight or flight is overactivated. So the vagus nerve is responsible for telling that to do that. What happens? That vagus nerve signals the amygdala. The amygdala says, uh-oh, we have a warning sign, and it may not be a real warning, but it says that, and then it sends out signals to the rest of the body. Here we go, fellas. We gotta get ready. Circle the horses, okay? So your blood starts to pool in all your major muscle groups, in your quads, in your glutes, and all that, and gets ready to fight or flight. The downside of all of that is that your reproductive system shuts down because it's not essential at that moment. Your digestive system shuts down because it's not essential at that moment. Many of your important systems in the body shut down. And what ends up happening with that is that you're ready to either run, lift, punch, kick, whatever it may be, and then it takes a period of time and it takes movement to dissipate it out of that body. So those of you who've worked with me with kiddos and the kiddo starts to get aggravated or whatever, and I'm like, hey, can you move this table with me? Can you do this with me? Let's play a game or something like that. And I change it into a game because their body has to move to wear that adrenaline through. If we try to hold it still with that, unless they're doing like progressive muscle tightening and releasing or something like that, what ends up happening is that adrenaline is almost like gonna get stuck and it doesn't do good things to the muscles. It can actually activate other systems within the body that break down the musculature in the body. We don't want that to happen, okay? But over time, what do you think happens if your digestive system is shutting down all the time because you're going in a fight or flight like every day? What do you think is gonna happen to your digestive system over time? You're gonna poop your pants. You're gonna poop your pants. Because what ends up happening is your digestive system goes, nope, can't do it. We're shutting down, fight or flight, and then everything pushes out. So I've got this student that I've worked with for years, and I've worked with him for years. I used to have as tracking data in his IEP, is he defecating in his clothes? Because he would be doing something and then all of a sudden be like, oh God, move to the side, poop, and then come back. And like nobody knew. You were like, oh, brother. We all knew, but he didn't think anyone knew. So he'd be like, yeah, I'm good, you know? But that was how we always knew. Because in elementary school, pooped his pants 4 or 5 times a day. Middle school, maybe once a week or so. Now, it's maybe a couple times a year when he's really stressed about something. So for him, that is because oftentimes people with heightened anxiety either have issues with constipation or they have issues with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. You go to the bathroom a lot. So that is a side effect of having an overactive amygdala. How can we make that amygdala happy? What can we do to make that amygdala happy? What sorts of things calm that amygdala down? What did you say?
Calm it.
Yeah, you could use an app, like a Calm app or something like that. Breathing techniques like Tracy suggested, you could do that. What else? Pressure on the front of the head, we talked about that. Pressure on the front, humming, buzzing, all those sorts of things will help that. What else will help that? What about smiling? Even a fake smile will signal. And I've had with students, few of them over the years, where I'll walk into a classroom and if I start to see them getting jiggy, you know, they were doing this and then things start to get tougher, they're bored and they start to, you know, they're looking around and they're perching on the edge of the chair. That's always a bad sign. When they're perching, you know something's gonna happen. That's when you need to intervene. Because you're like, as soon as they're perching, what are they looking for? They're looking for prey, and it might be you. So if I'm standing across the room for a kid and he's starting to do that, I'll look at him and do something like, you know, something silly, and they'll be like, oh my God. But they'll kind of smile or laugh back, and that buys me a few seconds to come up with another intervention. Because they're not gonna go to crisis at that point. Or they're not gonna look for someone to push them to crisis, or a reason to push them to crisis. Because that's what they're doing when they're perching. They're looking for a reason. For a reason to get upset or a reason to escalate. Why? Because their body is used to it. It is how their body reacts a lot of the time because it becomes this pattern. They're so used to it. They're so used to getting up and leaving the classroom. They're so used to having an issue. They're so used to climbing on the furniture that it becomes part of their protocol of how they always react. So we want to help reframe them. So smiling, get them to smile, get them to laugh, tell them something funny. That's why I tell ridiculous stories about my dogs and my kids and anything else I can come up with and create, because those stories typically at least make the kid go, oh my gosh, she crazy. And it's like, oh yeah, you don't even know. Because you want to get them to smile and laugh as much as you can. That serotonin release in that connection with you, that oxytocin release, helps get them back on track. Those two neural hormones help to get them back on track. You add a little dopamine in, and you're gonna get schoolwork done. Okay, you just need a little bit more of that. Those things work, help significantly to move them forward. So, we wanna think about regulators. How can we regulate? What are some natural regulators for all humans? Yes, water is a natural regulator. So, we tend to gravitate towards it. How many of you like the beach? You like the sound of waves, you like the sound of a river, you like the sound of rain. They make you wanna sleep. Yes, sights of water, sounds of water, touching water, doing anything with water is going to calm. It is a natural regulator. You don't know what's gonna regulate the student you're working with? Use water. Always go to that if you can't come up with something else. And people will say, he's just gonna dump it on the floor. And I'm like, well, it's better than punching me in the face, so I'm all for it. Just being able to see that water. It may mean putting on sounds of water. It might mean putting on a video of waves or something like that. I always tell teachers that's a great way to calm kids as they come into your classroom. You've got kids coming off of recess into the classroom, or you've got high schoolers in the afternoon because they don't wake up till 11 o'clock, right? So they kind of are like this most of the day, and then in the afternoon they're like on fire, you know? So water, that time period of the day, is helpful. So if, as they're coming in, have less fluorescence because they agitate the nervous system, and have more sounds of water, more sights of water, and all of that. Buildings themselves cause a lot of stress on the nervous system. All of the noise from the projectors, from the lights, from the heating systems, from everything, agitates the nervous systems. So you ever work with a kid who's, you know, not like outside at recess, and then comes in and is like losing their mind? Oftentimes it's the building noise agitates them.